Letter 17 of Letters from Hell. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Letters from Hell by Valdemar Adolph Thisted. Letter 17. I remember times of true contrition in my life. Not only when I felt cast down, but when I experienced also anguish of soul. The burden on my heart at such moments would almost crush me. I did see the nothingness and wretchedness of my pursuits. I felt I was on the road that would lead me to perdition. I seemed to hear voices crying, "Return! Ah, return while yet it is time." And my soul made answer, "I will return before it is too late." It was not too late while such promptings urged me. The deep unrest within was tending toward peace. I might have come forth a new creature from the conflict had I but taken up the struggle with sincerity. But I did not. Weak endeavors at best were all. And sometimes when I could not but consider my sins moodily, even sorrowfully, thoughts of levity would dart through me, pushing aside the tender stirrings of life eternal. And with renewed carelessness I plunged deeper than before into a whirl of amusement. Indeed, from my own experience and from what I have seen in others, I can testify to the awful truth that an evil spirit has power over human souls. How often some one has formed the best of resolutions, is turned from sin, and is anxious to seek the way of life, but the temper enters his heart, and he falls deeper than before. And then to say there is no devil. Devil? Yes, it is no use mincing an awful fact. It is he who drags men to hell. There is a devil, and the number of demons is legion. But, say you, how is it that God, the strong, righteous, pitiful God, allows the evil one such terrible power over human souls? Can he be the all-loving, all-merciful Father if he does not snatch them from the destroyer, even at the moment of their weakness? Do you doubt God, my friend? Was it not he who sent his good angels to watch the door of your heart, who put all that trouble and anguish into you, who made you feel and tremble at the burden of your sin? Aye, it is his Spirit who is at work in us when we feel we have done wrong, when we long to rise to a better life. It is he who shows us that we can rise, if only we will. But our will is at fault, our sincerity. That is it. What God does for us even at such decisive moments is immeasurably more than what the devil can do. But to God we listen not. Great as his love is, we care not for the riches of grace with which he tries to save us, whereas the devil need but pipe, and we straightway are ready to do his bidding. Is it to be marveled at that there is nothing left for us but to go to hell? I will have more to say. But how shall I say it? Will words not end in a wail of despair? In those happy days when I had Lily by my side, I often gave myself up to the enchanting thought that she was the good angel of my life, sent by God's infinite mercy, and that through her his love would lead me to heaven. That view of our relation was very sweet, and often filled me with the best of intentions. But if my heart was touched, it was but surface emotion. I was willing enough to be led by Lily, but I cared not to be led to God. Lily's mission, then, failed of its object, and there was no help for me. Since I have come to this dreadful place, my eyes have been opened to see that if I had yielded to the strivings of grace, and had given my heart to God, Lily would not have died in the flower of life; that, on the contrary, God's gift of happiness was coming to me through her. Even in those latter days, when the shadow of death was upon her, and on me too, it would not have been too late. A voice now says, had I repented of my evil course, had I turned to God even as a prodigal, Grace was at hand, and my Lily would not have left me. Death would have been stayed, having done its work of rousing the sinner. God himself would have given me Lily and the blessings of her love, and a new happy life might have followed. But no, God's means of grace could not break down the wall I had built about my heart. I would not turn from sin. What could she do but die? There was no other way of saving her from a life with me, a life that would have wronged her lovely soul. Her pure-robed spirit must needs wing its flight to heaven. Lily could but die, and it was well that she died. Well for her. I say so with the honesty of despair. How I hate myself, ready to dash myself to pieces were it but possible. All is fraught with regret wherever I turn. But this one thought that Lily was meant to be mine for a life of happiness is enough to turn all future existence into a hell of hells. God meant to bless me had he but found me worthy. Earth might have been heaven, and a better heaven to come. Do you understand now what hell is, and the awful misery of its retribution? I have lately been to a ball. You know that I have always been more or less of a ladies' man, but I did not frequent ballrooms overlong. I soon got tired of that sort of pleasure. Perhaps I was too heavy, too much of an athlete to be famous for dancing. In early youth, however, I loved it passionately, forgetting everything, earth and heaven, in the whirl of an intoxicating waltz. But it was in my riper years I raised objections to dancing. I always looked at the aesthetic side of things. I began to urge the unbecomingness of going on dancing for 10, 15 years or more. Let people dance for 2 or 3 years and be satisfied. The pleasure might be compared then to the fluttering of the butterfly amid the roses of spring. There is fitness in that on first quitting the chrysalis of childhood. Let young people dance, becoming dances that is. For them it is a natural and even beautiful pastime, an overflowing of the exuberance of life, and an innocent pleasure to their untaught perception. However, it was a grand ball which I visited lately and most fashionably attended. The society, to be sure, was mixed, but that also gave a zest. The illumination was perfect, considering our state of flight. For even with 1,000 chandeliers we cannot rise above a crepuscule. The tapers emit a false light only, making no impression whatever upon the reigning gloom. A good band was in attendance, but all their efforts produced no sound. Everything being elusive here, music naturally is left to imagination. One thinks one hears, and falls to dancing. The ladies were gorgeously attired in fashions representing several centuries. It almost looked like a masquerade. But these fair ones were only true, each to her time. And on the other hand, an attempt at making would have been poor deception, since all their pomp and vanity was transparent. Whatever their finery, you saw the unclothed woman beneath, some bewitchingly beautiful, others more like mummies than anything else. We marched round and round the spacious saloon, exchanging ladies at given times, so that one had the pleasure of touching hands with all the fair ones present, and forming their acquaintance. What a surprise! In my dining room at home I had a fine picture by a well-known artist. It represented a Roman beggar girl in life-size, 3/4 length. She is to be found in endless pictures, bearing dates from 1835 to 1842. For that she was in high favor as a model need scarcely be said. She was of true Roman blood, born at Trastevere, a fine type of Roman beauty, her face and figure, her grace and bearing, being equally admirable, and her rags, which she understood how to arrange in a manner so truly picturesque, were scarcely less charming. Fashionable ladies, with all their getting up, looked poor and insipid by the side of that beggar girl, and somehow she appeared proud of her rags, and would not have exchanged them for the most elegant attire, for she knew that to them she owed half her attraction. her independence and liberty besides. Paulina she was called, but among the strangers at Rome she went by the name of La Reina di Mendicandi, the beggar queen, or simply La Reina. Behold now the original of my picture, La Reina in person. One evening, as I was walking through one of the most quiet streets of Rome, a young woman, hastening up behind me, caught my arm, trembling, imploring me to protect her. It was Lorena. Of course I did protect her. Seeing her home, arm in arm, we went through the ill-lit streets, and friendliness seemed natural. I was ungenerous enough to pay court to her, but I did not know Lorena. Firmly, though gently, she refused me. And then, with a candor found in Italy only, she explained to me her position. She was happy now, she said, very happy. Most people treated her kindly, no one dared think ill of her, and she was free as the bird in the air. But if she yielded, all that would be lost, and she would sink to the level of the common street girl. So long as she could wear her rags with honor, she would not exchange them for the velvet and gold of a princess. More than this, even she told me, though without mentioning names, she had had the most enticing offers, but, sia benito ideo, she had refused them all. Arrived at her humble dwelling, she kissed me with a frank trustfulness, as a child might, and we parted. I subsequently had her painted. After some years, Lorena suddenly vanished. She had risen, as she said, above many a temptation, the proud beggar girl. But of one thing she had not thought, the possibility of love. Heaven seemed open. She loved, she yielded, and happiness was gone. In her rags she had been a queen. In silks and jewels she was but a slave. And worse was at hand. She was betrayed and cruelly disillusioned. Then all the natural gentleness of her disposition forsook her. A demon awoke instead, not shrinking even from vulgar crime. She thirsted for revenge. She was still a marvel of beauty, no longer gracious, but majestic. With an icy heart, yet burning in vindictiveness, she gathered her skirts about her, succeeding presently in making a fool of an old rake of a prince. For a moment only she stood at the height of splendor, meteor-like, but long enough to obtain the satisfaction she craved. With a crash it ended, and she never rose again. Now she was once more beside me, resting her arm in mine. But what a difference between the present moment and that far-off evening when I escorted her through the dusky streets of Rome. I had recognized her on the spot, and yet how she was changed! Involuntarily my feelings shaped themselves to a sigh. There is no happiness but that of innocence after all. But when I bent to her, whispering "Lorena, sta sempre in ricordanza," she answered with trembling haste as though overcome with the recollection, "Oh, state zitto, zitto. Nil inferno tut e finito. La Giorgia, le increnenza, e amor e supranza." As I was about to quit the ball, I was stopped by a man, to all appearance a roué of the first order, addressing me somewhat flippantly. "I see you are at home in this sort of thing, but have you assisted at the ball? It is quite another affair, rendering all the stupid and tame. It will come round again presently." I did not understand his hint, nor did I care to ask for an explanation. But I was to find out before long. For as the time draws near when utter darkness sinks upon hell, a madness of disposition possesses the fashionable, a straining of all efforts to make the most of the respite, as it were. This rage of amusement is vanity, like everything, and fruitful of pain only. But nevertheless the greed of pleasure abounds, plays, orgies, and immodest pastimes succeeding one another in a perfect whirl. All is forgotten, save one thing intoxicating and stunning the senses. Nothing so wild, so frantic, so shameless, but it has had recourse to at this period, and he who most successfully throws off restraint is the hero of the day. The well-bred society with difficulty preserves its reputation, you may imagine, for none so well bred but they yield to the contagion of the ball. They only try to preserve appearances, that is all. There's something remarkably like it upon earth. I mean the revelry before Lent. The season of dead darkness is our Lent, but alas, it leads to no Easter beyond. The devil surely has raised up that porch by which men enter upon a solemn time, the carnival of fools. Here, then, we have it to perfection, winding up the ball. And what is it like, this ball? Beginning in propriety, of course, the ladies all smiles, the men pictures of ease. The dancing at first is most orderly, following a gently swelling rhythm, but as a rising sea is its excitement. Look at their eyes, at the painting mouth half open. More tightly they clutch one another. Dead darkness is at hand. They heed it not in maddened whirl. Voluptuousness is all but one with torment. They dance as though a taskmaster drove them on to it, the taskmaster of sin. The greed is theirs, satisfaction alone is withheld. See the fair ones bereft of beauty, the gracious garments draggled and soiled. Is there a more awful sight than unwomanly women, hollow-eyed, corpse complexioned, with dishevelled hair and tattered clothes? As for men, the wild beast nature is upon them. It is a mercy that darkness in the end envelopes at all, falling suddenly, and covering, like the deluge of yore, what is only fit to be covered. See the end of pleasure unsanctified. The night of death engulfs them, and what then? What then? End of letter number 17. Read by Elijah Fisher.